Today's episode of Law and Disorder contains descriptions of sensitive themes, including drug use, underage drinking, and sexual assault on a college campus. Listener discretion is advised. To many, the early morning hours of June 3, 2011 were rather unremarkable in Bloomington, Indiana. It was just another early morning during summer session at Indiana University in Bloomington, where, just a month before, the campus had been abuzz with over 35,000 undergraduate students. During the summer session, it was much quieter, with only about a quarter of those ranks filled by students staying behind in the quintessential Midwestern college town. They were there to earn some extra credits and keep up the momentum of the university's robust social scene through the dog days of summer. The few students who stuck around found themselves at parties or at college bars that weren't far from campus. Students would pregame at a friend's apartment in the evening and then parade down Kirkwood and Walnut Streets to continue their evening. And among those students in Bloomington during this balmy summer session was 20-year-old sophomore Lauren Spierer, a textiles merchandising student hailing from Scarsdale, New York. Like many other students in Bloomington, enjoying freedom from parents and celebrating the end of another long week of classes, Lauren and her friends are planning to go out. On Thursday evening, they're going to start by pre-gaming at a friend's apartment. Game 2 of the 2011 NBA Finals between the Dallas Mavericks and the Miami Heat are being played that night, and then the party would make its way to one of the bars that play a critical role in IU Bloomington's social scene. For Lauren and her friends, their destination is Kilroy's Sports Bar on Walnut, or Sports, as it's more commonly known by the students. Tonight is beach night, and one of the bar's many patios has been covered in sand for an immersive, quintessential summer party experience. And because it's summer and most of IU Bloomington students are back home, the bar is emptier than usual from night to night. Understandably, the college bars tend to hurt for business when class isn't in session, and this means that it may be more likely for a bouncer to look the other way when an underage student with a fake ID comes to the door, especially if they're paying the bar's cover charge. Underage drinking and lax security create the perfect storm for tragedy. This night will end in a way that no one ever imagined. Lauren would go missing in a case that continues to haunt the students of IU Bloomington to this day. In fact, Lauren Spierer is still missing. At the time that we recorded this episode, Lauren Spierer has been missing for 13 years, 2 months, and 24 days. That is over 4,834 days since she was last seen on security camera footage at the intersection of 11th Street and College Avenue, heading south on College. It was as if she disappeared into thin air. I grew up in Northeast Indiana, about 3 hours north of Bloomington, and I was a sophomore in high school when Lauren went missing. IU was one of the schools that remained at the top of my list as I was trying to decide on a college, and even though I ultimately chose Ball State, I spent a good amount of time in Bloomington during my college years, visiting friends who went to IU. And whenever I visited the campus, the news coverage of Lauren Spierer's disappearance would come back to mind. Even though my friends and I wouldn't step foot on a college campus as freshmen until 3 years after she disappeared, we would still see posters of the young blonde woman hanging on bulletin boards and telephone poles throughout the town, and it was chilling. What was especially chilling about Lauren's case was the fact that even though there is a solid timeline of events that are supported by security camera footage and multiple witnesses who have provided statements in the case, investigators still do not know exactly what happened to Lauren Spierer that night, and she has still never been found. An additional complication to the case is the fact that it happened in a college town that is home to the largest public university in the state of Indiana. One thing that some of our listeners may not realize is the fact that universities, and especially universities as large as Indiana University Bloomington, have their own law enforcement agencies in addition to the local law enforcement agencies that exist within the town. The question of jurisdiction in cases like Lauren's can create some confusion, but in Lauren's case, the events that unfolded on the night of June 2nd and into the early morning of June 3rd, 2011, occurred completely off campus. Lauren was living in an off-campus apartment, the pregame party that she reportedly attended with her friends was off-campus, and Sports is obviously an off-campus bar. But her disappearance would ultimately inspire new protocols for student conduct on Indiana University's campus, and it would also lead to stricter measures by the Bloomington Police Department to crack down on underage drinking, something that is commonly seen in a college town. But these measures have left many wondering if the focus in the years after Lauren's disappearance became less on her disappearance and finding her, and more on the circumstances that led to this tragedy. On today's episode of Law and Disorder, we're going to discuss what we know happened in Lauren Spierer's disappearance, and I'm going to go through the timeline of her final known movements to get into some of the most logical of the theories that have been put forward in the case. Some of the theories that people have come up with in the last 13 years have gotten a little outlandish, and we won't cover any of those. But some of the theories touch on larger issues that still warrant some discussion. And as college students plan to return to campuses across the country, Lauren's case can serve as a great reminder of the importance of not only wise decision-making, but also the importance of looking out for the people in your group of friends, especially when the types of substances we're rather accustomed to seeing in campus party culture are brought into play. In the last year, investigative journalist Sean Cohen, who traveled to Bloomington from Lauren's hometown in the early days of her disappearance to cover the story, published a book titled College Girl Missing: The True Story of How a Young Woman Disappeared in Plain Sight. Cohen's book outlines the timeline of Lauren's last known movements with more detail than ever before. He utilized interviews with Lauren's circle of friends, her family, Bloomington law enforcement, and the IU community. College Girl Missing was an incredibly useful source in the writing of today's episode, and I highly recommend checking it out either in print or even as an audiobook. So there are a few key players in Lauren's case that will show up during the timeline of her disappearance. I'm going to take a moment to introduce them to you now. The first is Lauren herself. Lauren Spierer was a 20-year-old sophomore at IU Bloomington. She originally hailed from Westchester County, New York, and was a fashion merchandising student. Lauren has been described by her friends and family as gregarious and very lively. She was a petite blonde who loved to spend time with her friends. College seemed like the ideal social situation for Lauren, and Lauren was not taking any classes during that summer session. However, she did decide to stay on in Bloomington to wait on her boyfriend Jesse Wolfe so that they could drive back to New York together after he completed the 2-week-long course he was taking. Second is Jesse Wolfe, Lauren's long-term boyfriend. That summer session, Jesse had just wrapped up his junior year at IU. He was 2 years her senior. The pair had met 3 years prior to her disappearance, while they both worked at a Jewish sleepaway camp in upstate New York. Lauren had been a 17-year-old counselor in training and a rising high school senior, and Wolfe was 19. He had just completed his freshman year at IU Bloomington. He was described as a shaggy-haired, shy boy who was soft-spoken and kind. And when Lauren first met Jesse Wolfe, she found him attractive, kind, and a bit endearing. His family only lived about an hour from Lauren's home in Scarsdale, New York, and once camp ended, he would often drive the hour from Port Washington to visit her. One of the reasons why Lauren chose to attend IU Bloomington was to follow Jesse there, so that she could continue their relationship. The couple's first 2 years together in Bloomington were described as relatively blissful as a college romance could be. But as Jesse's impending graduation began to loom ever closer, it began to create some tension in their relationship. Friends of Lauren and Jesse mentioned to investigators around the time of Lauren's disappearance, Jesse, who was about to graduate, was hoping for commitment. He had mentioned marriage and was looking for a future of their relationship that would go beyond a college romance. However, only being a sophomore, Lauren was feeling hesitant. In College Girl Missing, Sean Cohen describes Lauren's perception of her relationship with Jesse as feeling a bit trapped in their relationship. Even though she did love Jesse and cared for him greatly, she was craving some independence, and it is believed that the next individual in the case may have played a role in this shift in Lauren's mindset regarding her relationship. Our third main player is Corey Rossman. Rossman was a rather new friend of Lauren's. They had officially met just the weekend before she disappeared, while they attended the Indy 500 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which occurs every year over Memorial Day weekend. The pair had both been in the Snake Pit, which is a huge multi-day party similar to a tailgate. It takes place at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's infield during the race and its festivities. Rossman was also an IU student. He was described as bold and interested in Lauren, with little disregard for the fact that Lauren was dating Jesse Wolfe. The budding friendship between Rossman and Lauren was upsetting to Lauren's boyfriend, who had heard rumors from his fraternity brothers while he was out of town during Memorial Day weekend, and after he had seen a photo of Lauren and Corey Rossman at the Indianapolis 500 circulating on Facebook. Rossman is reportedly the last person to have seen Lauren alive, and her last movements were recorded by surveillance cameras leaving his townhouse and heading south on College Avenue at the intersection with 11th Street. Early in the investigation, Rossman and his friends were suspects in her disappearance. So was Jesse Wolfe, but no criminal charges were ever filed against any of them. On the evening of June 2nd, only a few hours before she disappeared, Lauren had attended a dinner party at a friend's apartment in the same complex where she lived, the Smallwood Apartments. The friends were planning to watch the second game of the NBA Finals between the Dallas Mavericks and the Miami Heat, and while they pre-gamed for a night out at the Bloomington bar scene. Witnesses who were at the dinner party/pregame stated that Lauren arrived to the party with her good friend and frequent party companion, fellow sophomore David Rohn. The game started at 8 p.m. Central Time, and while many of those who attended the party began eating, Lauren instead opted to open a bottle of wine she had brought along with her. At the party, Lauren's friends mentioned that she wasn't really interested in the game, but more the social aspect of the event. While others tuned in to what was happening on the court, Lauren mostly scrolled through her phone, and when she was talking to fellow partygoers, it was mostly about her boyfriend Jesse and the arguments the couple had had lately. While Lauren was at the dinner party, she was exchanging text messages with both Jesse Wolfe and Corey Rossman, making plans for after the basketball game was over. Ultimately, Corey Rossman invited her to attend another pregame party that was happening at the home of a mutual friend, Jay Rosenbaum, which was only 2 doors down from where Corey Rossman lived with his roommate, Mike Beth. Before leaving the dinner party, Lauren finished the bottle of wine that she had brought with her to the dinner party, and she'd connected with her housemate's boyfriend, who frequently supplied her with recreational drugs. He gave her a line of cocaine and sold her and her friend David Rohn 4 Klonopin pills, often referred to as K-pins. Her friends described Lauren that evening as being in, quote, a constant state of motion, going from one apartment to the next at the Smallwood complex, texting Jesse Wolfe, and making plans for the next part of her evening. Around 12:30 a.m., Lauren and David Rohn leave the Smallwood apartment complex and head to their friend Jay Rosenbaum's townhouse for that pregame party. The party was an ordinary pregame, its sole purpose being to establish an initial buzz before heading to one or more of Bloomington's college bars and continuing the party into the night. By the time Lauren arrived at Rosenbaum's apartment, she was already highly intoxicated. She hadn't eaten, but had consumed an entire bottle of wine, some cocaine, and Klonopin before arriving to the pregame party. Lauren is seen in this surveillance footage wearing an oversized white top, black leggings, and ballet flats, with a Tory Burch wristlet that contained her fake ID, her Smallwood keycard, and her iPhone. Lauren and Rohn were escorted to the party by Corey Rossman. Rossman had made it apparent to both Jay Rosenbaum and David Rohn that he was interested in Lauren, and apparently Lauren was not naive to this fact either. This became apparent that Rossman's mission for the evening was to spend more time with Lauren and hopefully earn her affections. Additionally, it is appropriate to note that Lauren did have a connection with the host of the pregame party as well. Lauren had actually met Jay Rosenbaum in her hometown when she was in high school. He had come to town to visit some friends and happened to meet Lauren while he was there. They often partied in similar circles, and in the weeks before Lauren's disappearance, he had also indicated to Lauren's friend David Rohn that he, too, had feelings for Lauren. And while at Rosenbaum's, Lauren had spilled a drink on her shirt, and Rossman offered to throw her shirt in the dryer at his place. She accepted his offer, and they sat in his apartment on the couch while they waited, watching YouTube videos on Rossman's phone. Rossman also used this time to encourage Lauren to leave the party with him and head out to the bars. David Rohn found them as he was trying to call it a night and encouraged Lauren to come home with him, or at least go back to her place, but she decided to go to the bars with Rossman. At 1:46 a.m., Spierer is captured on surveillance footage entering Kilroy's Sports Bar, or Sports, with Corey Rossman. Sports was only about 3 blocks away from Rossman and Rosenbaum's townhouses, and this bar is huge. It has 3 levels and 2 patios, each with a separate bar. During the summer session, as a way to encourage more customers, one of the patios is turned into a beach. Sand is carted in with a truck, lawn chairs and beach balls are scattered about. There's even an inflatable kiddie pool on the patio. Beach night at Sports was the draw for Lauren and Corey Rossman on this evening. Lauren is seen on surveillance footage using her fake ID to get into the door, and an acquaintance of Lauren's, who happened to be smoking a cigarette on the outside patio as she arrived to Sports, described that Lauren appeared to be stumbling as she entered the bar. Corey brought over more drinks, and the pair remained at Sports for only 41 minutes. Security camera footage of Lauren and Corey Rossman leaving the bar shows that Lauren was so intoxicated she could barely walk out of the bar on her own. As they depart from sports, Lauren leaves behind her shoes and her cell phone. She and Rossman head back to the Smallwood apartment complex where Lauren lives. The pair arrive back to the Smallwood complex a little bit before 2:30 a.m., and they're spotted on security footage at the complex. They take an elevator up to the 5th floor, where Lauren's apartment was located, and Lauren was struggling. She was leaning up against the wall in the elevator and closing her eyes. According to that footage, from about 2:30 a.m. to 2:42 a.m., Rossman was involved in a confrontation with a group of boys in the hallway, just a few feet from Lauren's apartment. At least one of the young men in this group was identified as a fraternity brother of Lauren's boyfriend, Jesse Wolfe. The altercation gets heated, and one of the young men actually punches Corey Rossman in the face. When questioned by investigators about the cause of the confrontation, after Lauren had already been reported missing, Corey Rossman stated that he couldn't remember the details of the fight because he had been hit in the head and it caused memory loss. From witness statements of others who were at the Smallwood complex when the altercation occurred, the fight is believed to have been a confrontation over the fact that Lauren was visibly intoxicated and with a man that was not her boyfriend. It was believed that the fraternity brothers were trying to make sure that Lauren was not in any danger with Rossman, and they were encouraging Rossman to take her home and leave her at home. When Rossman got hostile, he was punched in the face. Around 3 a.m., Rossman and Lauren are captured on security cameras arriving at the ground floor of the Smallwood apartment complex. This is the last clear image of Lauren that the public would see. She was still wearing her white t-shirt and black leggings with no shoes. The pair are headed back to Rossman's townhouse, which is only 3 blocks away. On their walk, they pass a hotel and a bank, where their path is captured on security footage. In front of the Farmer House Museum, 1 block down, they make a left and turn down an alley. This is the midpoint of their journey between Smallwood and Rossman's townhouse. When they arrived to Rossman's apartment complex, he found the north stairway propped open and carried Lauren up the stairs to the apartment of some girls that had attended the party at Jay Rosenbaum's earlier that evening. Despite knocking multiple times, he never got an answer, so he carried Lauren back down the stairs, and they're seen in a parking lot nearby. She eventually went to a nearby set of steps and sat down, leaning her arm against the wall. Rossman is shown on security footage coaxing her to keep going, and Lauren loses her grip on the wall and falls back, hitting her head on the concrete. A bartender just off work walked by and heard the thud. She asked Lauren if she was okay, but got no reply. Rossman downplayed the situation to this bartender, saying, "She's just drunk," and then picked her up and carried her down the stairs chest to chest, and then carried her down another nearby alley and back to his townhouse. Rossman is shown eventually putting Lauren down so she can attempt to walk on her own, and she only makes it a few steps before she drops her wristlet and then falls, face first, with no attempt to catch herself with her hands. She got up, but then fell again, and Rossman takes Lauren over to a curb and sits her down before pulling up his iPhone and attempting to make a call. This is captured on surveillance footage, and this is the last footage that we see Corey Rossman and Lauren Spierer seen together. Rossman tries to call the number of a trusted friend from back home, but he gets no answer. It is unknown why Rossman never tried to call any of Lauren's friends, who were available and willing to pick her up in the cases that she would party a bit too hard. These would include David Rohn, who had been at both the dinner party and pre-game party with Lauren earlier that night, and had offered to help her if she needed anything as her evening progressed, or even her boyfriend, Jesse Wolfe. When the call to his friend from home sends him directly to voicemail, Rossman picks Lauren back up and carries her fireman style up the remaining blocks to the townhouse. No one knows what happened at Corey Rossman's townhouse or at the 5 townhomes complex, as there are no security cameras at the complex in 2011, so Spierer and Rossman's movements once they enter the building cannot be tracked for certain from the moment that they enter the complex, until Lauren appears on the security camera at a nearby apartment complex as she's leaving Corey Rossman's townhouse around 4:30 a.m. She is seen, still in the white top and black leggings, and she's last seen heading south on College Avenue at the intersection of College and 11th Street. Lauren was reported missing later that morning by her boyfriend Jesse Wolfe after a sports employee found her phone and replied to one of the many concerned, unanswered text messages that he had left with Lauren the night before. Since it has been over 13 years since Lauren's disappearance, it is widely believed by both investigators and Lauren's family that Lauren is deceased. This cannot be proven, as her body has never been found, and witnesses have never come forward stating that they know exactly what happened to her. However, there are a few theories as to what may have happened to her. Since her initial disappearance, Bloomington police have received over 36,000 tips related to the case, but ultimately these tips have led fairly nowhere. Some have tried to connect Lauren's case to those of other missing and ultimately murdered female IU students over the years, but there was no evidence to connect any of these cases together. Others believed her body was dumped into one of the bodies of water in or near Bloomington, including the Ohio River, Griffey Lake, or Lake Monroe, a man-made reservoir that is often frequented for recreation by IU students. Searches of these bodies of water came up empty. Another theory was that her body was dumped at one of the many construction sites that were in progress around Bloomington at the time of her disappearance, including the construction site that Lauren was seen passing at the corner of 11th and College Avenue as she left Rossman's townhouse. But if she were, her attackers would have likely been caught on a nearby security camera, or cadaver dogs that were present during other search attempts would have alerted to something. The two more likely theories point to an accident. Due to the amount of substances that Lauren reportedly took, it's likely that Lauren suffered from a drug overdose the night that she went missing, and rather than calling an ambulance, her body was dumped somewhere and her remains have yet to be found. Private investigators hired by the Spierer family believed that because Lauren was underage, her friends would have been fearful for prosecution under the consumption laws if they were to call 911. In 2011, when Lauren went missing, Indiana did not have what we call a Good Samaritan law, which would protect someone who was technically breaking the law if they were trying to seek life-saving help for someone suffering a drug overdose, under very specific provisions. These laws are often controversial, but are particularly important in situations of drug overdose, especially with an ongoing opioid crisis that is especially prevalent in rural areas like Bloomington. Indiana's overdose Good Samaritan law is often referred to as Aaron's Law, and it was not passed until 2015, 4 years after Lauren went missing. If Lauren's death was caused by an overdose and her friends would have been willing to call for assistance, legislation like Aaron's Law could have saved her life. However, an even more likely theory that has emerged from Lauren's case relates to a rare underlying medical condition. Lauren suffered from long QT syndrome, a rare heart condition that affects the electrical system that controls your heartbeat. It can cause fluttering arrhythmias and sudden drops in blood pressure. Lauren's condition was reportedly so severe that as a teenager, she was forced to stop playing sports, and her doctors advised her that she should avoid activities that would make her heart beat irregularly. It is often recommended that patients with long QT syndrome abstain from drug and alcohol use because of the way the different substances can drastically change a person's heart rate. In Lauren's case, alcohol would slow her heart rate down, while cocaine would speed her heart rate up. Additionally, most of Lauren's friends did not know about her condition. Long QT syndrome can lay dormant for a long time, and then symptoms like dizziness, heart palpitations, and even sudden death can come out of the blue. This combination of her pre-existing health condition and excessive mixed substance use and the lack of her friends' knowledge about her health condition on that night could have easily set her up for a grave situation that was ultimately nothing more than an accident. The tragedy of Lauren Spierer's case is a mix of many things. It is proof that a feeling of invincibility often found by young adults is truly a facade, but it also shows that our loved ones can be taken from us so easily with no real answers. Lauren's disappearance is a great loss, not only for her friends and family, but also for the bright future that she had ahead of her. Lauren Spierer's disappearance is still declared an open investigation by the Bloomington Police Department. However, the posters that once bore Lauren's face around campus are long taken down. As I mentioned earlier, a new book was recently published that uncovers details and evidence that have never been revealed to the public from Lauren's case. Written by investigative reporter Sean Cohen, College Girl Missing, the true story of how a young woman disappeared in plain sight, hit the shelves on May 28, 2024. The book was written with the cooperation of Spierer's parents and drew greatly on the files of private investigators that they hired in the wake of Lauren's disappearance. While Cohen has not solved Lauren's case with this book, the book presents, for the first time, a more fleshed-out account of Lauren's final hours, beyond what just investigators were able to piece together from limited security camera footage and conflicting witness statements. Cohen was also one of the first to convince two persons of interest in the case, Corey Rossman and Jay Rosenbaum, to speak on the record about Lauren's disappearance. While they are defensive and combative, it shows progress in the quest to find answers about Lauren's disappearance. I'm a big reader of investigative journalism, and I'd highly recommend checking out this book. And if you're more of a listener, the audiobook version was just released at the end of July. I'd highly recommend giving it a listen if you're interested in learning more about this case. I hope you found today's episode of Law and Disorder interesting. The Lauren Spierer case is one that stuck with me for many years. And I hope that you've learned something new, or at the very least got a good book recommendation from this episode. If you're interested in more Law and Disorder episodes, or even more episodes of other shows on this network, be sure to subscribe to Precinct 444 wherever you get your podcasts. As we enter a new school year, we hope that you stay safe, and we can't wait to see you back here at the Precinct.
Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the Precinct.